This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, hello everyone. So in our class yesterday, we were talking about the types of inheritances. Okay, so we'll continue with that. So whenever I'm talking about inheritance, as I told you, inheritance is nothing but taking the properties of one class into another. So we okay. So today we will talk about polymorphism also, and okay. So polymorphism. Okay. So before polymorphism, I just wanted to tell you. So whenever you are working about uh, or you're talking about the inheritance, we will be dealing with single inheritance. Okay, so we'll be dealing with single inheritance. So in single inheritance, we will have a single parent class and a single child class. Okay, so we'll have a single parent class and we have a single parent class. Okay. Now, basically, parent child is for just general understanding. But when you come into Java's terminology, when you come into Java's terminology, so parent class can also be called as superclass. Okay, so parent class can also be called as superclass, and the child class can be called as the subclass. Okay, so we'll try to represent parent and child classes by these methods. So superclass and the subclass. So single inheritance means the inheritance in which we have a single parent class or a single superclass and a single child class. Okay, so single child class. Okay. Okay, and one more thing that you need to understand over here is, suppose for example, if I'm creating a class, let's say I'm creating a class ABC. Okay, so if I'm creating a class ABC, always remember that it will be single inheritance. Okay, so now you might be wondered, like it's a single class, how you are saying it single inheritance. Okay, so always remember, whenever you create any class in Java, it will be the child of the object class. It will be child of the object class. So whenever you create any class, okay, so you might create employee class, you might create bank class, you might create any class for that matter. So that class would be the child of the object class. That class would be the child of the object class. So whenever uh, you have a class, okay, so whenever you have a class created, that class will be the child of the object class. Okay, that class will be the child of the object class. So now ABC you are getting. Now for example, you have one more class. Let's say you said class XYZ extends ABC. Okay, so class XYZ extends ABC. Now you can see XYZ class. So XYZ class is taking the properties of ABC and ABC is taking the properties of the object. Okay, so now definitely this is going to be multi-level. Okay, so this is going to be multi-level. So if you don't have one parent and one child explicitly, then also your class is said to be exhibiting the single inheritance. Okay, so because object is the parent of a particular class that you have created. So now who is XYZ here? XYZ is the grandchild, I will say. Okay, so grandchild. So this is child. Okay, so this is parent. Okay, so this is parent. So parent of this class and grandchild. So now XYZ, we can say XYZ is the child of object also. Of course, it is a grandchild, of course, but you can even simply say that it is the child of this particular object class also. Every class, okay, so in simple words, if I say every class will have the properties of the object class. Okay, so every class will have the properties of the object class. Every class will have the properties of every class will have the properties of object class. Why I'm saying in that way? I'm saying in that way because if you don't create a parent as object, so if you don't need to say extends object every time. So if you don't say that also, automatically it will become the parent. Automatically it will become the parent. Okay, so in that way you are looking at, okay, so you are looking at the parent and child classes. Okay, so that's how we will develop the parent child relationship. So you don't have to put anything, or automatically object will be the parent. Object will be the parent. Okay, so object will be the parent of the, so object will be the parent of the, okay, so parent of the ABC class, whatever class you created. Okay, so that you have to remember. If you don't put single inheritance explicitly, automatically single inheritance will be applied. Okay, so that's the basic terminology you should understand. Then we also understood hierarchical inheritance. So whenever I say hierarchical inheritance, let's say we created a class called shape, we created a class called rectangle. Okay, so we created a class called circle, so we created a class called square. Okay, all of these things are the children of the shape. Okay, all of these things are the children of the shape. So rectangle class, circle class, square class, all these are the children of the shape. So now obviously object will be there here. Okay, so object is the parent of all the classes. Okay, object is the parent of the parent of all the class. So rectangle will not only take the shapes properties, it will take the object properties also. So rectangle will contain object properties also and shapes properties also. So circle will contain object properties also and shape properties also. Same thing with this, object properties also and square. So we will talk about object properties later. Okay, so in that way you are going to deal with the things. Okay, so in that way you are going to deal with the things. So basic idea here is to understand uh, the terminology. Okay, so understand the terminology. Okay, right. Now we will talk about multiple inheritance. Okay, multiple inheritance. So what is multiple inheritance basically? Okay, so the type of inheritance. Okay, so what is multiple inheritance here? Multiple inheritance is the type of inheritance. Okay, so it's a type of inheritance in which we have uh, we have multiple parent classes. Okay, so multiple parent classes and one and only one child, sorry, one parent, one and only one, sorry, uh, okay, so multiple parent class and one and only one child. Okay, so what we are talking about here? So we are talking about a class having, okay, a class having multiple parents. Okay, a class having multiple parents. Okay, so multiple parents. Now let's say this is parent 1, this is parent 2, and this is parent 3. Okay, so here you have only one child. So now child will take the properties from here, child will also take the properties from here, child will also take the properties from here. Okay, now this multiple inheritance is not supported by the classes. Okay, so what I can say here, it is not supported by classes. Okay, so not supported by classes. So why I'm saying that it is not supported by classes? So why we are thinking, or why we are talking about this thing? Okay, so when you are talking about the multiple inheritance, it is not supported by the classes. So that's the logic. Okay, why it will not support? So let us understand. Now I cannot technically show you this. Okay, so I cannot technically show you this. So when I talk about the interfaces, okay, so when I talk about the interfaces, I can uh, tell you what is multiple inheritance, because interfaces will support. Okay, so who will support? Interfaces will support. So that is where I will show you what exactly the multiple inheritance is and all. Okay, so now try and understand here. Now let's say parent 1 is having x is equal to 5. Okay. So parent 2 is having x is equal to 8. So parent 3 is having x is equal to 9. Okay. Now child want to implement the x value. So child want to implement the x value. So child want to implement which value, or child want to access which value? The x value. Now here ambiguity come into the picture. Okay, so what do I mean by ambiguity here? Ambiguity means uh, a confusion. Ambiguity means a confusion. So what will come into the picture now? Confusion will come into the picture. So what kind of confusion here? What kind of confusion will come now? Let's say x. So now the confusion is, do I need to access P1x? Do I need to access P2x? Or do I need to access P3x? Okay, so what is the confusion over here? So the confusion is going to be, the child will be confused, like which one I have to use. Do I need to use P1's x value, P2's x value, or P3's x value? So it will get into a confused mode. Okay, it will get into a confused mode. That confusion mode we call it as ambiguity. Okay, same with the methods also. Now M1, M2, sorry, M1, M1 and M1, let's say. Now if you are trying to access this M1, so it will get into confused mode. Okay, which M1 I have to access, which M1 I have to access. So many people will ask me, sir, here if there is M1, if there is M2 and if there is M3, there is no problem. No, yes, no problem, but there is no support for classes itself. So no implementation of multiple inheritance. Forget about using different methods. Okay, so forget about using different methods. There is no implementation of multiple inheritance. So that is why we are not concerned with multiple inheritance. Not concerned with multiple inheritance through classes. Through classes. Okay, so that's what the logic basically. Okay, right. So now let's make a point here. So what is the point here? So multiple inheritance is not supported by, so multiple inheritance. Okay, so multiple inheritance is not supported by classes. Okay, don't say not supported by Java. Java supports. Okay, so it is supported in the interface concept. Okay, so all that we will see later. Okay, multiple inheritance is not supported by classes. Okay, classes only will not support it. Otherwise, so we will have okay, so otherwise we will be working with, so we'll be working with the classes. Okay, so we'll be working with the multiple inheritance basically. Okay, and finally you will have hybrid inheritance. Okay, so a hybrid inheritance. So what is hybrid inheritance over here? So hybrid inheritance means it is a combination. It is a combination of, it is a combination of all types of inheritance. It is a combination of all types of inheritance. It is a combination of all types of inheritance. So what do I mean by this? Now let's say I have a class here. Okay, I have a class here. I have a class here. Okay, I have a class here. Okay, I have a class here. Let's say. Okay. Now, what is the uh, relation between C1, C4 and C5? So this is hierarchical inheritance. Okay. So this is hierarchical inheritance. Okay, hierarchical inheritance. Okay. Now if you only take up C2 and C1, so it is going to be single inheritance. Okay, so it is going to be single inheritance. Now if you take up C1, C3 and C4, okay, so C1, C3 and C4, you call it as multiple inheritance. Okay, so multi-level inheritance. Okay, so what is that inheritance? Multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance. Okay, and if you go for C1, C2 and C3, okay, C1 and C2 and C3, so we call it as multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance. Okay, so in this way you are looking at all types of inheritance in one uh, concept. So that concept is known as hybrid inheritance. And for your understanding, so this is also unsupportive. It is also unsupportive. Okay, so it is also unsupportive in classes. It is also unsupportive in classes. Okay, so that's how you are looking at. So that's how you are looking at the things. Okay, so basic understanding of the inheritances is this. Okay, right. So now when I am talking about the inheritance, so these are the 5 types you have to look out. Okay, then we will go for the next one, which is polymorphism. Okay, so next principle of object oriented programming is going to be polymorphism. So whenever I am talking about polymorphism here, polymorphism is nothing but it is a technique. It is a technique where it is a technique where we use. Okay, so it is a technique where we use an element in Java for more than one purpose. For more than one purpose. Okay, so what we are doing here in polymorphism, it is a technique where we use an element in Java for more than one purpose. Okay, so a simple example I'll tell you. Plus is an operator. Okay, so plus is an operator that is used for addition as well as concatenation. So addition as well as concatenation. So suppose you are saying 10 plus 20. Okay, so 10 plus 20 will give you 30. Now, for example, if you are saying hello plus Java, okay, hello plus Java will give you what? It will give you hello Java. Okay, so it will give you hello Java. So in this way, you are looking at polymorphism 10 plus 20, hello plus Java. Okay, so in that way, you are looking at. Okay, right. So that is how you are looking at the polymorphism. Okay, right. So in Java, this is just a normal example. In Java programs, polymorphism is achieved by method overloading and method overriding. Okay, so method overloading and method overriding. Okay, so in Java program, polymorphism is achieved by method overloading and method overriding. Okay, now let's understand what is method overloading. Okay, it is it is a technique in which it is a technique in which we have. Okay, so it is a technique in which we have one or more methods with the same name. Okay, so it is a technique in which we have one or more methods with the same name and a difference in parameters Okay, so difference in parameters. Okay, number of parameters can be different. Number of parameters can be different, or or if the number is same, the types may be different. Okay, so types may be different. So it is a technique in which we have one or more methods with the same name and a difference in parameters. The number of parameters can be different, or if the number of parameters is same, the types may be different. Okay, now let's understand this. Okay, so let me open the Eclipse. Now let's say I have a class. Okay, I have a class uh, 1. Okay, so let's say I have a class 1. So in this class 1, I will use one method. So public void method. Okay, so public void method. So here I am having 0 parameters. I'm having 0 parameters. Okay, let's say method add. Okay, I'm having 0 parameters. So system dot out dot println. Okay, let me put it over in our example. Okay, yeah. So let me put it over here. Okay, so one. So system dot out dot println. So I'm saying. So I'm saying 10 plus 20. Okay, so 10 plus 20. So 10 plus 20. So when you are saying 10 plus 20 and when you are saying hello world, okay, so here you'll say hello Java rather. Okay, so here you are telling me to put Java. Okay, so to put Java, so I've kept Java here. So save this, run this. Okay, one second. Okay, so here you will have one. Okay, so 1 O is equal to new one. Then meth add. Okay, so meth add. So here you are saying you are getting hello Java and all, right? Okay, now let's say I will have the same method. Now it will say it is a duplicate method. It is a duplicate method. So what we can have, we can have int x. Okay, so we can have int x. Okay, so now I want to use that x. Okay, so I'll say x plus 100. Okay, now what I should say here, I should say o dot meth add of, let's say 5. Okay, let's say 5. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm calling o dot meth add, o dot meth add of 5. Okay, so I'm calling this 5, so I'm asking that 5 to go here. Okay, now again I'll have one more method. This time I'll say y, but as this is int, it will not accept. So what I will say, I will say double. Type can be different. Okay, so type can be different as I told you. Okay, so double of y. Now I will say o dot method add, o dot method add, o dot method add double of, okay, so let me say 7. Okay, 7.3. Okay, 7.3. Now tell me what happened. So 105 and 107.3. Why? Because this is going here. Okay, so here you don't have any parameters, but the method name is same. Here you have a single parameter, method name is same. Here you have a single parameter, but different type. So this is method overloading for you. So you can have any number of parameters. So you can have any number of parameters, but the type should not be identical. Type should not be identical. Okay, so here you have method 1 first version, method add second version, method add third version. But in 3 versions, there is a difference in parameter. Other things doesn't matter at all. Okay, so difference in parameters. So other things does not matter at all. So this doesn't matter. So we are only worried about the method name. We are only worried about the method name. So that's the idea basically. Okay, so that's the idea when working with the method overloading. So whenever I say method overloading, So method overloading means the concept of having different parameters. The difference of the parameters can be in type or number. Can be in type or number. Okay, so can be in type or number. Okay, so if the number is same, type can be different. Okay, so first one is empty. Okay, so parameter, here no parameters, here single parameter. So this is overloading, and here single is there but no type is matching. Okay, no type is matching. Okay, so in that way you talk about the method overloading. Okay, then we'll talk about method overriding. So method overriding, this is a concept of implementing the child class method. Okay, so this is a concept of implementing the child class, sorry, implementing the parent class method. Implementing the parent class method in the child class. Okay, the name comma parameters, name comma parameters must be the same, name parameters, return type must be the same. The access specifier of the child must have the same or lower precedence as of the parent, so lower precedence as of the parent. Okay, so what is this precedence and all we will understand. Now we have four access specifiers basically. So private, default, protected, and public. For now, try and understand what exactly they are, because public we already know. So public we already know. Public means accessible everywhere. So this is rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, and this is rank 4 actually. Now let's say I have parent class. Okay, so let's say in the parent class, I have private method. In the child class, no overriding. Okay, no overriding. So there is no overriding at all. Because private means it is accessible only within this class. Only within this class. So no overriding is possible. So when you have default, you can have default. So parent access specifier, child class access specifier. So parent class method access specifier, child class method access specifier. So default, you can have default, you can have protected, and you can have public. Okay, then you can have protected and public. Okay, protected means you can have protected and public. Okay, and finally public. Public means you can have the child as public only. So if the parent is public, the child should have public only. The child cannot have anything other than this. Okay, child cannot have anything other than that, right? Okay, so that's how you are looking in the change. So what can be the same? Return type can be the same. Return type should be the same. Method name should be the same. Parameters also should be the same. Name not a problem. So parameter types are important here. So parameter types are important. So parameter types. What can be changed? The access specifier can be changed. Access specifier can be changed. So if it is private, no overriding is possible. If it is default, it can be default, protected, or default means if you are not giving anything. So if you are not giving anything, it is termed as default. It is termed as default. Okay. So right, then protected. Protected means so you can have in the child protected or public, not higher than. Okay, so higher you cannot have. You cannot have the same. You can have the same or public. Okay, so finally public. So in the child you should have public. Otherwise you cannot go for it. Okay. Now for example, I will say okay extends one. Okay. Now let me make this private. Okay, if you are making it private, it is not accessible. First of all, it is not accessible in two. Okay, it is not accessible in two. So how can I say that? Okay, so twt is equal to new two. Okay, so now t dot method add. So t dot method add, right? Now see what it is saying. It is saying I am not visible. I'm not visible. So why it is saying I am not visible? Because so why it is saying I'm not visible? Because this is private. Private means only accessible within the class. Within the class. Okay, so that one you have to remember. So whenever you want you are having private, so that thing you have to remember. Okay, so that thing you have to remember. Okay, so private we cannot touch at all. Now for example, this one is default. Okay, so this one is default. I can access it. Okay, so I can access it, but default directly you cannot write. Okay, so directly you cannot write. This is not allowed here. So there are ways where this is allowed. That ways I'll tell you later. If you're not giving anything, it is called as default. It is called as default. Now, for example, if you are having, okay, if you are having public, it is allowed. Okay, so it is. Now what I'm doing here, I'm saying public void method add. So now if you observe this, okay, one second. So public void method, it is allowed. So why it is allowed here? It is you can have your own implementation. So system.out.println. So you will say hello Java. Okay. So now you are implementing the parent class. But let's say now this is default. So default means so you can have default here. So which is what method is this? This is the default method. If you don't give anything, it will become the default method. If you are not giving anything, it will become the default method. Okay, so if you are not giving anything, if you are not giving anything, it will become the default method. It will become the default method. Yes. Okay. Now, whenever you are talking about the default method, the child should have either public or protected. Either public or protected. Okay, so public is also fine. Protected is also fine. Okay, so public is also fine. Protected is also fine. So you can give public also. Okay, so you can give public also, or you can give protected also. But when you give, suppose for example, you can give default also. Okay, because the topmost is default, so you can give default also. You can give so public is allowed, protected is allowed, and same also allowed. Okay, same also allowed. Right now. Now we need to understand what is not allowed. Okay, so what is not allowed? Okay, so default parent class method. Okay, so what are allowed? These are allowed. So then what is not allowed, sir? If I put private here, so if I put private here, now if you observe here, so it will say cannot reduce the visibility. What it will say? Cannot reduce the visibility. So I am not looking at this. I am private. I cannot look at my lower. Okay, I cannot look at my lower class. I cannot look at my lower class. If it is upper class, I can see. But if it is a lower class, I cannot see. I cannot see. Okay. So this is not accepted. This is not accepted. And what is accepted? This is accepted. This is accepted. Okay. So in that way, you are looking at the logic. Okay. So then we will talk about protected. Okay. So we'll talk about protected. So protected. Now, if you see here protected method, so I will say protected. Okay, so I'll say protected. So what is allowed? Public is allowed. Okay, so public is allowed and protected itself is also allowed. Public is allowed and protected itself is allowed. Protected void method. So this is also allowed. Okay, so this is also allowed. But what is not allowed? So what is not allowed? The default is not allowed. So default is not allowed. Okay, so these are allowed. So default is not allowed. So what is default saying? Cannot reduce the visibility. Same logic, same thing it will say. So same thing it will say. Okay, so in that way the protected works. Okay, in that way the protected works. Okay, and finally, okay, so I'll talk about the protected. So this is a simple rule that you should follow. Okay, so protected methods. Okay, so protected methods. So whenever you say protected, okay, so protected method. So method add. So it is not allowed. It is allowed. It is allowed, but it is not allowed. Okay, and finally public. Now if you put public, so what you accept down? You accept only public. You accept only public. Okay, so you accept only public. So if you are giving this, it will give you error. Okay, so if you are giving this, okay, so let's say I'm just giving a comment, so this also will give you error. Okay, so private out of the question. So private out of the question. So if you are giving protected also, it will not be correct. But if you give public, definitely it is going to work. Okay, so public will work, but protected will not work, default will not work. Okay, so default will not work. So in that way you are looking at the rules. So rules of whom? rules of the rules of the so public methods. So rules of the method overriding. So method overriding. So you are overriding this method. Okay. You are overriding this method. So having the same name and everything. So this is called method overriding. Okay. So here if you observe, just a line will come. What that line will say, you observe. So the line will say overloading. Okay. So what is saying? Overloading. Okay. So if you observe here, it is saying overriding, sorry, sorry for the overloading word. So here overriding, so here you can see override one dot method add. If every rule is correct, it will override, otherwise it won't. Okay, so this is it for polymorphism. Okay, so in our next session we will be talking about abstraction and encapsulation. Abstraction and encapsulation we will be talking about. Okay, right. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Hope everyone understood. Anyone having any doubts, any questions, you can rise right now. Okay. Okay, then thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll meet tomorrow. Thank you.